as I mentioned at the opening of the show, this will be the last presentation of the Smart Scarecrow show until July. Checking my calendar here, it looks like the next show will be July 4th. Do I really want to do a show on July 4th, or do I want to be at I think, let's see what happens. In any case, with Sterling's presentation out of the way, it's about time we discuss a little news. Good evening. You're watching Scarecrow's News Rant. If you thought you were tuned in to MSNBC, be forewarned, you might want to change the channel now. A couple weeks ago, I reported that fellow in the picture here, his name is Adam Kesh, had been arrested in what can only be described as a questionable situation. I mean, some of the videos we saw of the man being arrested, the charges that were put against him, it just sounded a little bit like intimidation. Can you spell intimidation? Look that one up on Wikipedia if you don't know what it means. Bottom line is, this fellow Kesh was attempting to organize a march on Washington. Now, a march on Washington is not that unusual. I've lived in the Washington metropolitan area for most all of my life, and seems like every weekend or so there's somebody marching on Washington with some sort of an axe to grind. Well, something a little different about this march. Adam Kesh was proposing that people, to show their support for the Second Amendment, engage in this march with a loaded rifle strapped to their back. Now, of course, some people said, it's like waving a red flag in front of a bull, and, I probably agree with him. Whether you agree with Kesh or not, whether you agree with the march on Washington that he was attempting to organize or not, you should agree that his arrest was trumped up and was a pure and clear act of intimidation by the police. Now, Kesh got his charges reduced to nothing more than a citation, basically a ticket. Initially, they were charging him with a felony assault of a federal officer. Well, we all saw the videos. We would have really have liked to have seen that one go to trial, because, I think he would have made them look like absolute idiots with all the videos of his arrest taking place. Bottom line is, he even refused to sign the citations. Well, he's out. The March on Washington is now in question. It may indeed not come off on July 4th as originally planned. Instead, Kesh is now suggesting that you should march on your state capital. The idea is to get more people involved, people who couldn't possibly make the trek all the way to D.C. to show their dissatisfaction with current policy, might be more inclined to march on their state capital. Consider, make up your own damn mind. Now, this guy Kesh is kind of a tough character to peg. I've heard all sorts of rumors. I've heard that he's on Obama's payroll and this and that and the other. I don't know. I don't care. in the coming days, this nation is going to need a John Adams. It's going to need a Benjamin Franklin. And we probably are going to need a George Washington. I hope not, but we may. Bottom line is, we're going to need people who are willing to put it all on the line. Whether you like this guy or not, we're probably going to need more like him. Have you ever heard the term pay to play? Pay to play. You think you're in a casino out in Las Vegas, right? You want to play the game? Got to buy some chips. Well, suppose I told you that something as simple as the right to broker bonds. Yeah, like treasury bonds, municipal bonds, things of that sort. Say, you made your living selling bonds to investors. Did you ever stop and think how somebody gets positioned in such a way that they can sell bonds? This article from Reuters, a former Goldman Sachs again. Why do these guys keep popping up in the news? A former Goldman Sachs Group Inc. investment banker has agreed to a 5-year securities industries ban. Basically, he's not allowed to practice his trade, and a record fine to settle U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission charges that he broke rules against influence peddling to win bond underwriting business in Massachusetts. Tell me it ain't so. Tell me that politicians are putting their hand out and getting payoffs to make sure that only a select few are allowed to deal in the nation's securities. This big fine that this fella got slapped with, $100,000. Okay? Now, to me, $100,000 is a lot of dough. To you, $100,000 is probably a lot of dough. To these guys, $100,000 is a kiss on the cheek. This guy just got off. He got away with murder and paid nothing. He did not go to jail. He did not lose his Securities and Exchange license. He's put on a 5-year suspension. And he got a fine that's roughly 2% of what he makes in a year. I can't help it. Man, that's bullshit. That is bullshit. Now, say you're the Justice Department. The Justice Department. Just us department. Say you're the Justice Department, and, you've been caught doing something a little shady. Say maybe, you've been looking at stuff you really don't legally have any business looking at. Reporters, emails, and phone calls. Say that, you were going to have to be investigated and maybe tell the people who you've been spying on what you've been up to. That might be very uncomfortable. Well, suppose the first judge said, nope, you've been bad. That's it. Full disclosure. Second judge you go to says, yep, you've been bad. What do you think you might do? If you're the Justice Department, You just find yourself another judge. It's that easy. So, yeah, that's what our Department of Justice has done. They have shopped for a compliant judge who will put the cone of silence on much of the investigation of the Justice Department spying on members of the media. Now, the problem with this spying on the media is that it has a chilling effect. Say you were a whistleblower and you had some hot information and you wanted this information to be public, but you really didn't want it coming back on you that you were spilling the beans. You might go to a trusted member of the media and hand them an envelope in a dark alley somewhere and expect anonymity. But now, if the Justice Department can just willy-nilly spy on the media, what do you think the chances are that whistleblower is going to trust the media to hand over the dirt that you really have a right to know about? Yeah, that's what this is all about. That's what it boils down to. And the Justice Department is obviously shopping judges to get favorable rulings so they can continue this practice. And yeah, that too is absolute bullshit, but it's true. There's been a very uncomfortable trend in what used to be referred to as law enforcement. More and more, we're seeing our local police departments and sheriff's departments militarized to the point where it's very hard to discern an officer of the law from a uniformed member of the military services. And in fact, their actions seem to have devolved from that friendly officer on the beat who, boy, if you had a problem, if the kid was lost or whatever, cat up a tree, he was always there to lend a helping hand. And, he was kind of, a member of the community, a respected member of the community. Now, in an encounter with the police, the attitude is entirely different. If you're driving in your car on the public thoroughfares, you'd be looking like a rolling ATM machine. If you spit on the sidewalk, I don't know how much longer it's going to be before we go like Singapore, where you got to, they cane you for spitting on a sidewalk or something. Frankly, the enforcement of the law has gotten to be a militaristic agenda. They enforce it with military zeal. It's gotten to the point where when you have an encounter with the police, you have every right to wonder if perhaps your life and limb might be in danger. A couple of quick examples. Fort Worth, this is reported by CBS. A grandfather, this guy's in his 70s, 72 years old, a grandfather checking on his neighbor. Apparently the neighbor's alarm went off on their house. So, it's night. He goes out, and damn right he's got his gun with him. He doesn't know what he's going to encounter, but he goes to check his neighbor's property to see if anything's going on. He hears the alarm go off. He looks around a little bit, doesn't see anything going on, so he starts walking back to his house. Well, about that time, the police arrive and shoot the guy in his own driveway. And they didn't just shoot him once. They shot him repeatedly. This guy died with 7 holes in him. No questions were asked. No challenge was made. The police were scared because this 72-year-old grandfather had a handgun. Is that an excuse? Think about that one. Make up your own damn mind. This is the guy here. I mean, does he look real scary? Now, this fella here is doing something that a father should never have to do. He's holding up a picture of his son laying on a slab. Now, his son happened to know. Apparently went to the same gym and did some kickboxing sparring with one of the fellas that are accused of pulling off that bombing up in Boston. And, of course, he became a person of interest because he had ties to these guys. Now, he hadn't seen those fellas in a couple of years. He lives in Florida, has been living in Florida for a couple of years. Had apparently little, if any, connection. But he was repeatedly interviewed by the FBI, and in the last encounter with the FBI, the FBI was accompanied by sheriff's deputies. He was interviewed in his home, alone, and at some point during an interview that ran for many hours, he was shot and killed. Now, of course, the law enforcement officials have indicated that he made some sort of a threatening move right after he had confessed to all these terrible crimes. Interesting thing was, he was shot 7 times in the chest and once in the back of the head. Sound a little excessive? Just a day near me, a little town called Sterling, Virginia, not too far from where I live. Some woman working for a Costco. Don't know if she was on SSRIs or what, but apparently she went a little cuckoo. She was, obviously a little off. She was making some threatening moves. She did have a knife. I mean, at least this woman was armed. The fella who's laying out on the slab here wasn't even armed. Police were called in an attempt to subdue the woman, but it seemed as if the only tool the officers had available to them to subdue this woman, who was obviously having some sort of a psychotic episode. She was obviously mentally ill. Seems the only tool the police had available to them was to shoot her dead. Now, this type of incident is happening all too often today. The immediate reaction of the police in any encounter with the public seems to be maximum force applied. Submit or we will shoot you. Submit and we may just shoot you anyway. There have been cases recently of suspects handcuffed behind their back in a police car, obviously under control, being shot while attempting some sort of assault on the officers or something. Too many of these incidents are happening. The police and this ongoing militarization of what used to be protect and serve is now submit or die. There should be a serious national dialogue that involves potentially dismantling the police forces in favor of perhaps the old cops. Maybe get back to citizens on patrol, maintaining the peace. Perhaps we really don't need a professional military force operating as our law enforcement. And that ain't bullshit. Think about it. Make up your own damn mind. That was Scarecrow's news rant for May 30th, 2013. I hope I got you thinking about those issues, but, let's run down the items one more time, just so we're clear, okay? Justice Department, IRS, bank fraud, Fast and Furious. How about those unemployment numbers? Are you buying them yet? Don't you feel secure? Hasn't Homeland Security done a great job of making you feel secure? And hey, what about that run up to World War III? Are we still on target, boys? And that bunch was bullshit. That's it for the news.